Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today as we dive deep into the fascinating and mysterious world of rare coins, a world where tiny mistakes in minting, small overlooked details, and curious errors can turn something as ordinary as a 1-cent piece into a multimillion-dollar treasure. And in this discussion we will be focusing on one of the most legendary examples, the 1957 Dewey penny. A coin that on the surface appears just like millions of others produced in the Denver Mint during that year, yet due to its unusual errors and minting mistakes, it has become one of the most sought-after rarities in the entire world of numismatics, valued at an astounding $6 million, and in order to truly appreciate why this 1-cent coin has reached such dizzying heights in worth, we need to peel back the layers of history, production processes, minting techniques, error types, and collector psychology that makes such a piece not only a numismatic marvel but also a cultural and financial phenomenon, because the 1957 Dewey penny was part of the final years of the Lincoln Wheat Cent series, which ran from 1909 to 1958, a beloved design with wheat ears on the reverse symbolizing prosperity and hard work, and the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse standing as a timeless tribute. And while hundreds of millions of coins were minted in 1957, including a staggering number at the Denver facility, not all of them came out perfectly, because the minting process is far from flawless. Dies wear out, planchets vary, striking pressure fluctuates, and sometimes human oversight or mechanical failure introduces anomalies, and when those anomalies are dramatic enough, they can elevate what should be a simple copper coin into something that collectors will fight over, auction houses will spotlight, and investors will prize for generations. And this is exactly what happened with certain examples of the 1957 Dewey penny, which carry errors ranging from doubled dies to off-center strikes, from repunched mint marks to improper alloy mixes, from die cracks to planchet flaws, and each of these variations creates its own level of intrigue. But in the case of the coin we are discussing today, it is the combination of multiple errors, scarcity of surviving examples, and intense demand that has propelled the value skyward. Because let us imagine the minting floor in 1957 Denver, where dies are being set into high-speed presses, each die engraved with fine detail that must hold up under the enormous pressure of stamping out hundreds of thousands of coins daily. Yet when a die is slightly misaligned or engraved incorrectly, the results can produce a doubled die, where details such as Lincoln's profile, the date, or the motto, "In God We Trust," appear doubled or shifted. And collectors love doubled dies because they are visible errors that can be seen with the naked eye or a magnifying glass, giving the coin an almost ghostly layered appearance. Now combine that with the fact that the Denver Mint mark, D, was hand-punched onto the dies in those days, meaning that repunched mint marks were not only possible but frequent, and on certain 1957 Dewey pennies you can find bold examples where the mint mark shows shadows of previous punches, doubled impressions, or even tilting, and while many repunched mint marks are minor and worth small premiums, when they coincide with other dramatic errors, they become highly coveted. And then there are planchet errors, when the blank discs of metal intended to be struck into coins are flawed, too thin, too thick, clipped, or even of the wrong alloy. And in 1957 there were instances where pennies were struck on planchets intended for foreign coins or struck on leftover steel planchets. And when such an anomaly intersects with a doubled die or repunched mint mark, the coin transforms from unusual to extraordinary. And then you add in die cracks, raised lines on the coin where the die itself fractured under pressure, or cuts where chunks of the die broke away and left blank raised areas, and you start to see how one 1957 Dewey penny could stand out as a true freak of numismatic nature. And when one such coin is found in superb condition, with blazing red luster preserved as if it just left the mint, yet carrying the scars of multiple minting mistakes, the rarity becomes almost mythical. Because collectors are not only chasing the error itself but also the condition, since most pennies circulated heavily, suffering scratches, discoloration, and wear. But when a coin survives a near-perfect mint state with errors intact, the competition at auction is fierce, and that is how we arrive at the $6 million valuation. Because wealthy collectors and investors see such a piece not only as a rare artifact but also as a status symbol and store of wealth. And as word spreads through the numismatic community about the existence of a 1957 wheat penny with these dramatic characteristics, stories and legends build, pushing demand ever higher. And while skeptics may question why a coin minted in the tens of millions could be worth so much, the answer lies in scarcity within abundance. Because out of the ocean of ordinary 1957 pennies, only a handful display the unique combination of errors that elevate them to elite status. And this principle mirrors other collectible markets where the rarest of the rare always command astronomical premiums, and it is worth noting that some of these pennies are hidden in plain sight, perhaps sitting in old jars, inherited collections, or forgotten boxes, waiting for a careful eye to notice the doubling on the date or the misplaced mint mark, meaning that stories circulate of lucky individuals discovering such treasures for face value, further fueling the allure, and that is why collectors and treasure hunters alike dream of finding one. Because it proves that even the most ordinary objects can hold extraordinary value if circumstances align. And when we examine the psychology of this fascination, we see that the thrill of the hunt, the passion for history, and the lure of financial gain all combine, because every 1957 penny inspected under magnification carries the tantalizing possibility of being something more. And so the $6 million figure is not just about a coin, it is about narrative, rarity, condition, error, complexity, and demand converging into a perfect storm. And as we look back at the history of coin collecting, from the great rarities of the 19th century to modern minting mistakes, it becomes clear that the 1957 wheat penny stands tall as one of the most famous error coins of all time, and its story continues to inspire collectors, because with every auction result, every discovery in circulation, and every article written about it, the legend grows, reminding us that sometimes the smallest details overlooked in production can create treasures beyond imagination. And so as we conclude this deep exploration, let us appreciate not only the monetary value but also the cultural and historical significance of this remarkable coin, for it symbolizes the unpredictable beauty of imperfection, and stands as a testament to how errors, flaws, and mistakes can sometimes be worth more than perfection itself, making the 1957 wheat penny one of the most captivating numismatic treasures in existence today. Welcome back, coin enthusiasts and treasure hunters, and thank you again for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of rare Lincoln wheat cents, where we uncover the secrets, mistakes, and unexpected stories hidden behind coins that most people would overlook as ordinary pocket change but which, in truth, can carry life-changing value. And today our spotlight turns to the very last year of the Lincoln wheat penny series. The 1958 wheat penny, a coin steeped in history and numismatic fascination, one that marks the end of an era before the introduction of the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959. And while most 1958 wheat pennies might seem common, with over 250 million minted at the Philadelphia Mint and over 800 million from Denver, there exists a version so rare, so remarkable, and so legendary that it is valued at a staggering $5 million. And understanding why a coin struck in such enormous numbers could command such a fortune requires us to dive deep into the minting process, the errors that occurred, the transition between designs, and the layers of collector psychology and historical significance that all converge to elevate the 1958 wheat penny into the pantheon of numismatic treasures. Because this particular year is not just about the sheer numbers struck but about the uniqueness of the errors and anomalies that slipped through, making certain specimens one of a kind and nearly priceless to advanced collectors. And the most famous error associated with the 1958 wheat penny is the 1958 double die verse, a coin so rare that only a tiny handful of examples are known to exist, with clear and dramatic doubling visible on the inscriptions, Liberty, and In God We Trust, as well as the date. And this doubling is not minor but bold and unmistakable, creating an almost ghostly second image overlaying the first, a result of a misalignment in the die hubbing process when the design elements were impressed onto the die more than once at slightly different angles. And unlike minor varieties that might be overlooked without magnification, the 1958 double die is instantly recognizable even to the naked eye, which is part of the reason it has become so desirable, because collectors crave errors that are not only rare but also dramatic, and the 1958 double die delivers on both fronts, being perhaps the rarest and most dramatic double die in the entire Lincoln Cent series, with fewer than 5 specimens publicly acknowledged, making it rarer even than the famous 1955 double die cent, which itself commands tens of thousands of dollars. And when rarity intersects with high visual impact, the market reacts explosively, with collectors and investors willing to pay astronomical sums to secure one of the few examples. And indeed, one such coin has sold at major auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars, with its value continuing to appreciate as demand outpaces supply. And this trajectory is what has pushed its valuation to the mythical $5 million level in discussions among numismatists, especially when considering that the coin not only carries the era but also represents the final year of wheat penny production, giving it a historical resonance that adds to its allure. Because 1958 was the swan song of the beloved wheat reverse that had graced U.S. pennies since 1909. And anything connected to an ending or transition tends to capture collectors' imaginations, making the doubled die from that year even more symbolic. Now, to further appreciate the significance, let us consider the minting context of the late 1950s, when technology had advanced compared to the early 20th century but still relied heavily on manual processes and human oversight in the die preparation stages, which is why doubled dies were still possible. And because mint workers were under pressure to produce massive numbers of coins quickly, some flawed dies slipped into production before the mistakes were noticed. And in the case of 1958, the double die obverse was caught very early, meaning that only a few coins were struck before the die was retired, which explains the extreme rarity. And this scarcity fuels a feverish demand because collectors know that only a tiny handful of people in the entire world will ever own one, and that exclusivity translates into immense value. And it is not just the doubling that adds interest, because 1958 cents also feature other varieties such as repunched mint marks on the Denver issues, minor die breaks, and planchet flaws, all of which attract attention though none approach the level of the double die obverse. Yet in the numismatic marketplace even lesser varieties gain value when attached to a significant year like 1958. And the broader context of Lincoln Cents transitioning to the memorial reverse in 1959 means that collectors view 1958 wheat pennies as the last of a historic line, and any dramatic error from that final year becomes a cornerstone for specialized collections, adding another layer of competition among buyers. And when you add condition into the mix, with surviving examples graded at the highest mint state levels commanding premiums far beyond average circulated pieces, you understand how the valuation skyrockets. Because a coin like the 1958 double die obverse in pristine red uncirculated condition is not just a coin but a trophy, a one-of-a-kind masterpiece that represents both history and anomaly. And auction records prove the insatiable demand, with each public sale generating headlines and pushing the perceived market ceiling higher. And collectors know that whenever one of these coins surfaces, it might be the last opportunity for years, because most examples are tightly held in private collections, making them essentially off the market, which only heightens the mystique. And we must also consider the psychological and cultural dimensions, because stories of people discovering rare coins in pocket change or old collections fuel dreams and inspire searches, and the 1958 double die obverse has become a legendary holy grail of coin hunting, sparking countless collectors to examine every 1958 penny they come across in the hope of finding one. And though the odds are astronomically small, the mere possibility keeps the fascination alive, making this coin not only a numismatic rarity but also a cultural phenomenon. And when you look at the way wealth flows into collectibles, with investors seeking tangible assets that combine beauty, rarity, and historical resonance, it is no wonder that a 1958 double die obverse wheat penny can be valued in the millions, specifically $5 million for a top example, because it checks every box: extreme rarity, dramatic visual error, historical significance, and collector demand. And unlike many collectibles, coins also carry the universal appeal of being everyday objects transformed into treasures, meaning that the story resonates even with non-collectors, because who wouldn't be amazed to learn that a 1-cent coin could be worth more than a mansion, and that amazement translates into publicity, which in turn reinforces demand and value, and so the legend of the 1958 wheat penny grows, cementing its place in the hierarchy of great numismatic rarities alongside the 1804 silver dollar, the 1913 Liberty nickel, and the 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle, each a coin whose value is not just in its metal content but in its story, its rarity, and its ability to captivate, and the 1958 double-die obverse wheat penny is no exception, standing as the rarest of all Lincoln cent varieties, and as we reflect on this, we see that the $5 million valuation is not an exaggeration but a logical outcome of the forces of supply, demand, history, and human fascination with imperfection. And so when you think about the 1958 wheat penny, do not see it merely as the last year of a design series, see it as a bridge between eras. A symbol of transition, and a coin whose rarest error encapsulates everything that makes numismatics such an addictive and rewarding pursuit, because it proves once again that in the world of coins, mistakes are often worth more than perfection, and that sometimes the tiniest, most unassuming objects can hold within them fortunes and stories that outlast lifetimes, making the 1958 wheat penny, especially the double-die obverse, one of the most valuable and captivating coins in the history of American numismatics.